This video is a long overdue continuation of my video series on making content online while avoiding being doxxed. In the last video, we discussed what devices you should and shouldn't use for your anonymous content. The bottom line was to keep your smartphone, and various other smart devices, very far away from any sensitive activities and to get a dedicated laptop. This laptop should be purchased as anonymously as possible and should be compatible with Qubes OS in case you want to switch to Qubes, regardless of the operating system you start with initially. In this video, we'll be discussing account creation and usage. For all the various accounts you will be using for your anonymous content, they should only be created once you have your dedicated device. If you've created them already on any other device, you should strongly consider abandoning them and starting from scratch. If you plan on creating accounts on any mainstream platform, you will need a phone number that is not tied to your real identity. If you do not plan on using mainstream platforms, see the timestamps in the description should you want to skip this section. In almost all cases, voice over IP type numbers, such as Google Voice and similar, will not be accepted. You will need an actual phone number tied to a real SIM card. In common parlance, this would be referred to as a burner phone. The ability to easily and legally acquire a burner phone is highly dependent on what country you live in. In the United States and Canada, and I believe Mexico, it is still relatively easy. In much of Europe and numerous other countries across the world, you may be required to submit an ID or passport in order to purchase a SIM card. I live in the United States, so that is the only country I can comment on from personal experience. If you live in the United States, I would advise purchasing a dumb phone, also sometimes referred to as a flip phone, as well as a prepaid plan in a physical store purchased with cash. A cheap smartphone could potentially be used as well, but its capacity to collect data about you is obviously much greater than with a dumb phone. When you go to purchase your burner phone, ideally you would leave your actual personal phone at home. Otherwise, your phone location data, which is constantly supplied to Google or Apple, could later be used to tie your identity to the purchase of the burner phone. If leaving your phone at home is not a feasible option, at minimum, I would turn the phone off and place it in a Faraday bag. However, if you are someone that rarely turns your phone off, this may look suspicious to anyone with access to your location data, so keep that in mind. Also, as I mentioned in a previous video, placing your phone in airplane mode does not defeat location tracking. Your phone will still use GPS, Wi-Fi access points, and Bluetooth beacons to triangulate its own location. Once you turn off airplane mode, it will immediately upload all that data back to home base. Another consideration is that your vehicle, if newer than about 2014, may have location tracking of its own that could potentially be correlated. Dealing with this concern is beyond the scope of this video. But there are ways to disable vehicle telemetry, the ease of which greatly depends on the make and model of the vehicle. Do your own research. Depending on your level of paranoia or the capabilities of your potential adversaries, it may also be worth considering the presence of CCTV cameras when you purchase the phone. If this is a concern, you may want to scope out vendors in advance and determine if they have cameras. With luck, you may be able to find a smaller store or flea market that does not have cameras. Unfortunately, all big box stores will certainly have cameras. However, if they are deployed at a high angle near the ceiling, you could wear a baseball cap and a COVID mask to avoid them capturing any identifiable footage of you. Another potential option for purchasing the phone and the prepaid card, which I have not personally tried, is to use a Monero-paid Amazon intermediary service such as Anon Shop. This should work fine, as long as the item you are purchasing ships from Amazon directly, which is a requirement for delivery to an Amazon locker. If you go with this method, you will still have to deal with CCTV cameras from the locker system itself, as well as potentially in the store itself that hosts the locker. But since you will not have to interact with any employees directly, there will at least be less interpersonal awkwardness when wearing a hat with sunglasses and a COVID mask. Once you have acquired the phone, never turn it on at home, work, or anywhere you typically frequent. Also, as with purchasing the phone, never turn it on anywhere near your smartphone unless the smartphone is powered off. If the battery can be removed, do so whenever the phone is not in use. If the battery cannot be removed, consider placing the phone in a Faraday bag whenever it's turned off and not in use, just to be sure. In my experience, activating these phones or adding service can be done online, or sometimes through the phone itself somehow. If the phone can be activated over text message, this is the ideal solution. Next best would be over the vendor's website, but I've found these sites will certainly block Tor exit nodes and may also block VPNs. Try using VPN after Tor. See my previous videos on how to do this. For the particular burner phone I use, the website blocks all VPNs, so I'm forced to call customer service to activate or add service. Fortunately, the customer service agent is an AI and I can answer all questions by pressing buttons, thereby preventing the company from capturing my voice. Once you have a working burner phone, make sure to keep renewing the plan with prepaid cards so you have no lapse in service, or else you may lose your phone number. Some providers, such as TracFone, have relatively inexpensive plans for 90 days, or even an entire year that work out to about $10 to $15 per month. Before proceeding further, you should first make a decision as to whether you plan to do all of your anonymous content research and production from public Wi-Fi, or whether you feel it is safe to do some of it from home. Although this guide assumes the Tor network, and sometimes a VPN as well, is used for all web traffic connections, it is conceivable that certain government agencies have managed to crack Tor, especially if you're being specifically targeted. I personally doubt that any agency can de-anonymize all Tor users constantly, but unfortunately this is all just speculation. So if you think this is a concern, you should only log into your accounts over public Wi-Fi, so that if your actual IP address is discovered, at least it won't be at your home. Before actually creating your anonymous accounts, you should first develop a detailed alias. One useful tool is the website fakenamegenerator.com. This site will generate a random name, date of birth, address, and a ton of other randomly generated background information about this fictional person. However you generate the alias background information, save all the pertinent details in your password manager. Keep all these details consistent across your accounts, to give the impression that anyone with access to your accounts would assume your alias is a real person. The next step is acquiring an anonymous email address. Unfortunately, this is much less easy to do today than it was 5 or 10 years ago. Numerous services require an existing email address and sometimes a phone number. A common email service that is popular in the privacy and security community is Proton Mail. One advantage of Proton Mail is that all your emails are encrypted at rest, so even Proton Mail employees cannot read them. Additionally, if you send an email to another Proton Mail address, it will be automatically end-to-end encrypted. They also allow you to sign up and access your account over Tor and even have a .onion address. One problem with Proton Mail is that it is increasingly becoming discriminated against by mainstream platforms. It may not be blocked entirely, but it certainly factors into some unknown algorithm where you may be blocked, or have your account suspended, or be forced to solve CAPTCHAs, or verify your account with a phone number more often. I currently use Proton Mail for everything with no serious issues, but it is something worth considering, since this discrimination issue could become more severe in the future. Another issue is that Proton Mail will always demand an existing email address to prevent spam and abuse. They claim that they take a hash of this email and do not actually save it. I would say this is probably true, but there's no way any of us can verify that. So take that for what it's worth. I personally circumvented this issue by finding an obscure dark web email service that required no personal details to sign up, then gave that to Proton Mail for verification. I am reluctant to recommend any particular strategy or service for this, since I've found the verification requirements for any random email service to be changing frequently, with the trend towards requiring an existing email and/or phone number for nearly all of them. I should mention here that for the purposes of online anonymity, using an encrypted email provider such as Proton Mail is not strictly necessary. Even if you go with a less secure option and your emails are released in a breach or spied on by a rogue employee, your email account shouldn't contain any information that could potentially lead back to you, as long as you are practicing good OPSEC. Once you have your anonymous email account set up, and cell phone if needed, you can finally proceed to create your accounts where you will post your content. If you're using mainstream platforms, only do so connecting with VPN over Tor, also known as VPN after Tor, on your dedicated laptop. I made a tutorial on how to do VPN over Tor in qubes, linked in the description. Since you will be connecting over a VPN, you can expect a fair amount of harassment in terms of repeatedly solving CAPTCHAs and verifying your phone number. If a platform allows you to set up two-factor authentication with TOTP, you should do so at your first opportunity. TOTP stands for Time-Based One-Time Password, and first entered mainstream usage with the Google Authenticator smartphone app. It works by your device and the website sharing a secret key that generates a 6-digit number that refreshes every 30 seconds. The primary purpose of TOTP, or really any two-factor authentication scheme, is to increase account security. Even if someone has your password, they still won't be able to get into your account. The added benefit, in our case, is that these platforms are less likely to demand phone number verification each time we log in. Fortunately, you don't need a phone app to set up TOTP. The password manager qvm-service, which I briefly demoed in my Using Qubes video, allows you to set up TOTP fairly easily. Anyway, in terms of the harassment you will face from mainstream platforms, it's difficult to provide any concrete information on what to expect here, since the rules of each platform seem to change frequently. For instance, YouTube or Google used to require you to link your account to an Android phone before you could set up TOTP or hardware token authentication. I recall attempting to do this with my own account some time ago and ran into that annoying roadblock. However, I just recently attempted this again, and they have apparently removed that restriction. It's also possible my account reached some milestone in age, subscribers, or views such that my account reached some status so that this requirement was lifted. It's difficult, if not impossible, to know what is going on behind the scenes at these companies without insider information. When using mainstream sites, I would recommend against typing text of any significant length directly into the site, such as responding to a comment on a YouTube video. The reason for this is that the JavaScript could potentially record detailed information about your typing that could potentially be used to fingerprint you. In fact, there's a company called Typing DNA that claims to be able to implement two-factor authentication just by having you type 4 words. This is enough of a concern that the normal non-Qubes version of Unix comes with a program called Cloak that attempts to obscure your typing and mouse movements from websites. So to prevent this type of fingerprinting, I would recommend you type whatever you need into a word processor, then copy and paste the text into the window. For small amounts of text, I personally type with one finger, hunt and peck style, which is going to look quite dissimilar to my normal typing biometrics. Mouse movements can almost certainly be used to fingerprint people as well. This is a more difficult problem than avoiding keyboard inputs, since there's no easy way of avoiding the use of a mouse to interact with most websites. My advice here would be to use different types of mouses for different identities. Perhaps only use the touchpad on your dedicated device and exclusively use an external mouse on every other device. Or you could get a trackball-type mouse and only use that with your anonymous content, and never with your real identity. Another somewhat related method to link your online identity to your real identity is analyzing your writing style to identify patterns that could then be linked to writing under your real name. This is known as Stylometry. If there is no large sample of your writing online anywhere, then you have nothing to worry about. But if there is, this is a threat you should be aware of. I plan on making a video specifically about this topic, but in the meantime, I've left some links in the description that should cover the basics, if this is something you may be concerned about. If you need to use public Wi-Fi frequently and are concerned about CCTV cameras, one option we have to mitigate this is an external Wi-Fi adapter with an antenna. This will allow you to connect to the public Wi-Fi from a distance, perhaps in your car, or even in an adjacent building. I was able to accomplish this in Qubes using this adapter, the Panda Wireless PAU04. I will provide detailed instructions below, after explaining a few caveats. I chose a Panda Wireless adapter since they are all plug-and-play for Linux, meaning they don't require any driver installation. There may be other companies that offer something equivalent, but this is the only one I'm aware of offhand. It is possible to use USB Wi-Fi adapters in Qubes that require additional drivers, but for the sake of simplicity, I would strongly recommend one that doesn't, given the finicky hardware compatibility issues frequently experienced in Qubes. My instructions for setting this up also assume that you have separate sysnet and sys-USB virtual machines. One of the options during installation is to combine them into a sysnet VM that also serves as the USB proxy. I'm sure it is fairly simple to adapt these instructions for the combined VM, but it is not something I have personally done, so I can't give detailed instructions. So given you have a plug-and-play adapter and a separate sys-USB VM, the instructions are as follows. Open the Qubes Manager, right-click on the sys-USB cube, and select Settings, then click on the Services tab. Make sure the Network Manager service is listed there, and the box next to it is checked. If the service is not there for some reason, I have listed detailed instructions on how to add it in the description below. Next, Under the Advanced tab, ensure the option Provides Network is checked. Then open the settings for the sys firewall VM. Under the Basic tab, change the net cube from sysnet to sys-USB. Once I applied these basic settings and plugged in my adapter, it worked right away. Another red network icon appeared in the tray in the upper right side of my screen. I was then able to select the Wi-Fi network as normal. So that's everything I wanted to say about account creation and usage. I may do another video in this series detailing about how certain people's anonymous identities were exposed as case studies we can learn from, to ensure our OPSEC would protect us from the given attack vector. If you want to support this channel, I've left a Monero donation address in the description. I don't have any plans to make something like a Patreon, so this is the only option I have available. Monero is the best way to completely conceal our transactions from prying eyes. Thanks for watching.